Hey, good morning everybody. State of the Island, April 30th, 2025. I know the acoustics in here suck, and for that I apologize. I'm just trying to kill two birds with one stone. The problems that we're having with the machines are costing me a lot of time in the morning, extra work. So I don't have time to sit down and do a State of the Island right now, or as much time as I do normally do, as well as get everything cleaned up and then of course the food plated. So with that being said, I haven't checked any comments to see whether it's a good idea or not. I always worry about trying to do a GoFundMe because I don't want it to be met with failure and end up needing like 10 grand or 6 grand and then end up getting like 3 grand and people are like, oh, what'd you do with the money? Well, it wasn't enough to do what I needed to do, so the money just got spent later on. I don't ever want to deal with that problem. So that's why I'm always hesitant to try to do a GoFundMe or whatever. But anyway, I think I'm gonna have to do it. I can't take this anymore. Like I said, it's cutting into about 2 extra hours of my time personally a day. And the staff themselves, see, I'm a floor guy, okay? So I spend my whole life looking at the damn floors. So the staff doesn't do as quite of a, I don't want to say thorough job as me, but they don't pay attention to the floors like I do. Nothing wrong with that. They pay attention to the floors just fine. I fixate on them. So I know when every little thing's out of whack, it drives me nuts. And I know how a machine's not working properly, or it's not sucking up properly, et cetera, et cetera. So long story short, got to get this thing fixed. Tenant cannot be much of a help other than getting me new squeegees. Although Amy, I really appreciate you doing that for me. Thank you. That's a lot. But anyway, so that's that. I promised you guys yesterday that I would be talking about this pipe dream of mine. And the thing when I got into this industry, you know, the thing that I noticed right away, you start noticing things that are wrong with it. And it was at first on a local level, but now I see it more on a grand scale. And there's a lot of problems, guys. There's a lot of freaking problems. And like I said, before I get into the problems, which we'll probably go into tomorrow, I want to talk about the industry that I was formerly in, and an organization that actually, from my opinion, not only prevented the problems, but streamlined the industry and made it actually beautiful to be a part of. So many of you know that I used to do high-end custom hardwood floors. And I didn't start out that way. I started out doing just strip oak floors, and I'm competitive, so Floors actually used everything that I was good at in school: art, math, and PE. So go figure, you actually learn something in school. You don't know what you're going to apply it to, but later on in life, somehow you do. So anyway, the best thing I could do with my competitive nature and athleticism was just see how fast I could lay a floor. And so at first, guys, I swear to God, my claim to fame was a strip oak floor, 2 1/4. Just your typical trash red oak floor, not pre-finished, unfinished. I came into a job at 7:30 in the morning, 1,000 square feet by myself. And back then we didn't even know properly about acclimation and all that. So it was in a sweaty ass house in the summer with a generator. I didn't even have real power. And my claim to fame was I laid 1,000 square feet that day, 1,072 square feet by myself, and was packing up by 6:30 that night. You ask anybody in my industry, or if anybody does hardwood floors, or husband does hardwood floors, that's pretty damn impressive. But anyway, my artistic side started kicking in, and I started seeing some of these guys making these beautiful floors. And then I came across a magazine called Hardwood Floor Magazine. And this is about 6 years into doing the flooring, 5 years. And in this Hardwood Floor Magazine, it was the Floor of the Year Awards edition for that year. And on the cover of that magazine, I saw a hardwood floor that looked more beautiful than any tile mosaic thing you'd ever seen in your life. And I'm like, oh my God, this is hardwood. How do you do that? So, long story short, to even be entered into this competition, you have to be a member of the National Wood Floor Association. The National Wood Floor Association is the governing body of the hardwood flooring industry. And they're awesome. I cannot say enough good things about them. What they were is in 1989, I believe, 87 or 89, somewhere in there, they started a nonprofit organization. This organization had, its CEO, CFO, all these people in charge, like a normal organization would. But these were not floor layers. These were nonprofit business people. They had a board of directors that changes every 2 years from all walks of life in the flooring industry. And by all walks of life, I mean contractors, big and small. In some cases, architects and designers. Product companies such as Bona, 3M, you've heard of these companies. Sand machine companies, Bostitch, Stanley Bostitch, even DeWalt. All these companies were part of this. And what they did was that they developed an industry that put some credibility back into the hardwood flooring. We're not just a bunch of grunts doing just crap work. where there's no insurance, there's no anything where you're not going to get a good job and you're going to get screwed out of the deal. They worked very hard to turn an industry of fire worshipers and fire eaters and snake worshipers into actual craftsmen. And it benefited everybody because they would put on conventions and they would put on schools and they would put on seminars. And they would discuss all the problems in the seminars. They would come up with everything to do in the industry. They would come up with these programs, these classes. And they would be literally everything from basic classes. And these are contractors going in there to do hardwood floors in these schools. And they would do basic, intermediate, advanced, expert, and jigs and fixtures, all these different programs. Classes on how to glue solid flooring to concrete substrate. And then for the big guys, like the people that sell products, such as your 3Ms and your Nortons and Clark, you've heard all these names. They would be able to come in and demo their products in these schools, getting the contractors to use their products. So it was really good for everybody all around. You know, the people that are selling the products are getting them out to the right people, and the people that are using the products are picking the ones that they like the best, doing the best product they can for you, the consumer. And like I said, it was a way to get these guys, these grunts, us college dropouts or worse. Now all of a sudden we have something to be proud of, and we have degrees. You know, I myself, I never attended, you'll laugh at this, I'll explain. I never attended a school. My first school that I ever attended, as a student I should say, the first school that I ever attended was I taught the expert school, the top school of all the schools. I'm very proud of that. Because I came into the industry hot. When I saw that floor on that cover of that magazine, the next year I went out and designed my own floor. I entered the industry and I won my first floor of the year that year. The very first entry I ever did. All of a sudden catapulting me to literally rock stars fame in that industry. You know, when I was younger, had a hot wife, had a creative mind. So it was really cool going to the conventions. We were treated like royalty. And I was asked to teach at the expert school. Now, I don't even have degrees in this, where all these other guys are getting their degrees. Through going to these schools, they would get their craftsman degree, their advanced degree, or their master's degree, their advanced master craftsman's degree, their Vanguard, their ambassador's degree. Well, I never attended a school. So how the hell am I going to do that? Well, teaching the schools gave you that too. Writing articles for the magazines and the seminars would do that. Winning Floor of the Year awards, which I won many, would do that. So needless to say, I have my craftsman degree, my master craftsman, my advanced master craftsman, my Vanguard, and my ambassador's degrees. I wrote the technical reference manual, not by myself. I'm part of who wrote the technical reference manual for the National Floor Association. Our standards and specs hold up in every single set of architecture plans in the country. They supersede any law, state or federal. So, why am I telling you all this? Because this industry set itself above any other, again, rules and regulations or individual stuff, which is the problem in the pet industry. You know, you have the AKC, which is supposed to be governing breeding. I don't even know if you have an organization that's supposed to be governing shelters, rescues, and sanctuaries. You have the AMVA, which is governing the medical. You have all of your product sellers out there, from individual products themselves to the big stores that sell all of the products, such as your Chewies and your what else, PetSmarts and so forth. And then you have I guess the ASPCA, which is a joke. But anyway, I think their notoriety is pretty good. Anyway, I think our industry needs a governing body such as the one that I just explained to you in the National Wood Floor Association that supersedes all of this. Now it's going to be a little bit more involved because you're dealing with life now. You're not dealing with an inanimate object or wood. So getting the AMVA on board and pulling them away from the pharmaceutical companies and getting the research, that's what I'm talking about. Having seminars, pulling this research out there on people can go to conventions and learn stuff about titers testing and learn, what's good stuff to be in a vaccine and how much of a vaccine is too much, et cetera, et cetera. And then of course, your food companies like your Purinas and then your Farmer's Dog, top to bottom, they can come in and discuss everything good about their products and people can learn. And then you've got an organization where you've got a central database, no matter where we are in the country, and you work with local law enforcement is involved in this because they have to get involved with local animal control, who then gets involved with with the local shelters, who then gets involved with rescues and fosters, and then finally the sanctuaries. Imagine an organization that governs all of this, okay? And I'll get into a little bit more in a second, but I'm sorry, my mind's going crazy. That governs all this to where we're all communicating. Somebody picks up the phone and says, hey Bobby, I know you're pretty much at capacity, but I got somebody in southern Pennsylvania or eastern West Virginia. They got a baby, he's got hydrocephalus, man, we need your help. Well, how did they get a hold of me? Because the shelter reached out to them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then maybe eventually through this network, this grand network, we can save them all. It's a pipe dream, but I don't see why that can't be possible, you know? And of course, each member, and it's based on the size, like small flooring contractors, we would pay small dues each year. It was like $600-700 a year to be a member. Bigger ones like your companies, like your 3Ms and those guys, you know, they would be spending thousands of dollars a year, not to mention supplying a lot of free material for the schools, etc. But anyway, this is a way for all of these bigger companies to put their dollars in to all of us, because let's face it, if you take our industry, just like the flooring industry, sure, you got those big companies selling their shit and the employees for those companies, but the backbone of our industry was the little guy, the flooring contractors, the guy that worked by himself, had 10 employees, had 20 employees. Every town, every city has dozens, if not hundreds, of these flooring contractors. And then in your rural areas, you've got more of them. So all of these guys, to get any kind of recognition and actually credibility, many of them join. And of course, that also helps us in a court of law, right? So, you know, we follow all the rules and regulations. They had inspectors. We have an inspector come in, and somebody tries to sue us for something we didn't do wrong. The proof is in the pudding. Inspectors had all that stuff. He goes in there in a court of law, stands up, and either determines that the contractor's at fault, the manufacturer's at fault, or the homeowner themselves is at fault. And it's great. And here's another avenue it would work great in. The AMVA would be a hard one to deal with. I know that's going to be something that's out of my realm. And like I said, I don't want to run this thing. I would love to be a part of it. I would love to share ideas with it. I would love to help develop it. I would love the passion and what I bring to the table, which is a no compromise when it comes to the dogs' lives and what's healthiest and best for them. No compromise, zero compromise whatsoever. You know, I want to bring that attitude to it. But let's take this one for example. Breeding. A lot of you say, oh, I can't stand breeders. Well, guys, if we didn't have breeders, next generations of dogs are not going to be here. You need breeders. You need responsible breeding. Okay? So with that being said, why aren't breeding, to be a breeder, the regulations, I don't want a bunch of red tape, but they need to be expensive and they need to be decisive. So you should, if you want to have state, I know state and locals are probably going to get on too, but there should be a federal regulation for this. I don't want state because they should vary from state to state. I want one thing that says this is how it goes. And with breeding, this is how it should be. Imagine you get a dog from a breeder, okay? And you know, it doesn't matter if it's championship bloodlines or not. They've gone through the hula hoops or the hoops and the rings to get their breeder's license, and they're breeding dogs. Of course, there's going to be all these stipulations that have to be required. You're not breeding a Malamute with a Chihuahua to get a designer dog, okay? You're breeding specific AKC dogs, and that's it only. Now, you know, if they're not perfect, that's fine. You know, they're not championship dogs. I get it. So, but you have to go through all this red tape, and if you don't do it properly, you lose your license, and then that comes with a federal penalty, whether it be jail time or fines. And for example, like imagine this. I've been looking back and forth as far as when is a good age to spay and or neuter an animal. And the newest information, I used to be a big fan of waiting to the first spay. And the reason why is I felt like a human being, you don't tie somebody's tubes at 6 years old. You wait until they become an adult, right? Because of hormones and all that. That was my thought process. Until I saw one statistic that blew my mind. If I wait for them to have their first, the first heat cycle. If I wait for them to have their first heat cycle, they have a 93% chance of not developing pyometra, mammary tumors, or something derogatory like cancer of some sort. So let's take that and put it in perspective here. Let's say all my dogs, all 100 of them, okay, we'll say 100 instead of 101, all 100 of them are female. That means 7 of them are guaranteed to have pyometra. 7 of them are guaranteed to have pyometra or mammary tumors or some form of cancer due to having not been spayed early enough. They're saying now that it was a study that I read that 0.03% or something ridiculous like that, if you spay them before their first heat cycle, that literally there's a 99.9, like there would be a chance that none of these dogs would ever have that problem if they were all females. Okay? So, where I'm going with this is if we can spay them and neuter them young enough, and a breeder has to hold on to them. You don't get an 8-week-old puppy as cute as they are. Maybe you get a 10 or a 12-week-old puppy because that's the youngest age where they're comfortably being spayed or neutered to where they'll stay healthy. And the only way that you can get a dog that isn't already spayed or neutered coming from them is if you have gone through the paperwork yourself to specifically become a breeder. Okay? So that means you and I going out there and getting this, oh, we got this guy and this girl, they're so cute together. Whoops! Now we got a litter of puppies. That eliminates all that. It eliminates it completely. And that's just one idea, and I know it's like really rudimentary, and there's a lot more you can do with it, but there's so much that you could do as an organization to go across the top of this. And then you hold the food companies accountable. You make them do better. You know, if you want to be a part of this industry, yeah, we're no longer pushing poisons, okay? And I know that stuff like flea and tick and all that stuff, pesticides, they're gonna still be popular no matter what you try to do. But they got to be more forthright with the side effects of it. And there also needs to be options out there, as you know, with my Magnificent 7 spray and many other options, that there are natural deterrents to getting worms and other parasites such as tick-borne and flea-borne diseases and heartworms. Well, why is that? Because you can put stuff in the environment around you, certain herbs, certain plants, put stuff in them, certain herbs, extracts, that will prevent any of these pests from wanting to even eat or touch them. So there's a lot to this, guys. And again, this is just me sketching some very broad strokes. But imagine you could get dozens, if not hundreds, of like-minded people across the country to get this started with much, much more intelligence and education than I have. And from all of these backgrounds, veterinarians that care, breeders that care, you know, shelters and everything. And we're all working together. There is a way to freaking do this, okay? It's just going to take, so that's my pipe dream. It's just going to take years and years and money and a lot of coordination and cooperation. And that's why when I say somebody like Adrian, I reached out to her to help me with this little girl, Molly. I knew it would help Adrian too. Or Adrian reaches out to me to help Eli. This is the basic, this is the most fundamental version of what I'm trying to do here. Rescues working together in the same atmosphere, trying to help one another out, trying to help the dogs first and foremost. Who's better suited to take care of this animal? Well, Shelter First to give to the general public. Well, these ones are unadoptable. We got to send them to the rescues until they become adoptable. Rescues determine, well, these are just no longer adoptable. So either they're part sanctuary, they stay there, or there's specific sanctuaries like myself that they go to live a happy life. There's so many things we can do with this. That's my pipe dream. Tell me what y'all think. I'm just shooting shit out my head. So thank you guys. Have a good day.